Welcome to Cincy Entrepreneurs Unplugged, where EO Cincy members lay it all on the line, sharing real stories of their worst moments and greatest lessons learned. Get ready for an action-packed series featuring a dynamic lineup of EO Cincinnati members.
Today we have a special guest. She is the incoming president of EO Cincinnati, owner of multiple BIGGBY Coffee franchises, the area representative for BIGGBY Coffee. She runs a private consulting firm for franchise operators and is the queen of coffee. So join me in welcoming Shanna Novosel. Shanna, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you, Jay. How are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
Good. Good to see you and hear you.
Likewise. Well, I always joke that anytime we have a conversation, which is oftentimes EO board related, I can usually steal at least 30 minutes of Shanna Novosel consulting time. So I try and drop in some of my own challenges, and Shanna can whiteboard it out on the whiteboard that is always living behind her and help me find my North Star. So
And in front of me, I have not only a whiteboard behind me, but a blackboard in front of me, which is, yeah, everybody's got their own thing, right? I'm a visual person. I like to see everything laid out. I like to see my path, my vision, and my journey.
I love it. Well, like normally we would start these off with some rapid fire questions, but
Yeah,
before
let's
we
do
go
that.
there, I have a very specific question for you.
Oh, gotcha. What is it, my friend?
You said you have a whiteboard behind you and a blackboard in front of you. Do they have different purposes?
Yes, they absolutely. And actually, I have like five. If you were, I mean, I could zoom you, but the world can't see this. But no, I actually have like four whiteboards. All of them have different purposes. Some
Okay.
are like the one behind me is basically where my current stores stand, which we have 39 open, soon be 40. I have one that's like the stores that are about to be open and where the progress, and then the blackboard, which is the prettiest one, which I will show you since you can see it, is my vision. um, this
Ooh,
is this is it's only we've only done the first quarter, but this kind of lays out. Can you see it?
yeah.
Yeah, that kind of lays out like as my staff is dodging me. It kind of lays out just our pathway of what we're going to execute this year and how we're going to get there.
That is
So
so cool. So
thanks.
I love the idea of mapping out the vision on a board like that. You've got all these amazing colors. Uh,
Yes, it's very pretty. Has to be girly.
well, well, hey, lean into it. So with it reminded me of, did you ever play the game of life as a kid?
Oh, so we kind of this year. So every year, my staff, I have very talented staff. They're two in the office. They're called the Sarahs because they're both obviously named Sarah. And one of the Sarahs is a creative, and so she has full creative reign to do the board any way she wants.
Uh-huh.
So this year, she kind of took a mimic between Candyland and racing, and
Ooh,
kind of made a raced car track that has Candyland theme. So
mm,
it's cute.
that's awesome.
Thanks. It's
Um,
fun. It's fun. And then that way, and my purpose for it obviously is every day. And we have these Monday morning meetings, we refer to the board. So the three of us every day, all day long, are literally staring at what our goals and objectives are. So we don't get off track.
Hmm. I love it. You shared something before we hit record, which really resonated with me, and it was that you're a very visual person.
Yes.
And like if you look at, not in this office here, but in our main office, I have blackboards in everybody's office, and unlike yours, mine tend to be a bit of a mess. But I also have digital monitors all over the office tracking everything that I feel like is relevant at the time.
Yep.
And it's that same idea of, well, on like a more granular level, what are the numbers that we're tracking, and can we put them in front of everybody so that they can always tell whether or not they and we are on track or off track? But for me, from like a, kind of a strategy perspective, that blackboard, like I don't know what I would do without the blackboard. I have those
It's my
ideas, I
lifeline.
set them up and like move them around, and it sort of has it sort of has a life of its own. It's like
Yep.
ideas up there, they could simmer for like 2 years. And then I'm like, that was a crap idea and I'll get rid of it. But then there's always like a working section where there's something happening. And for me, just having that big physical space where I can put the ideas and see them works so much better than having them in like a digital file somewhere, or it's like really need it in front of me.
That's I'm the exact same way. I have to see it and I have to, if I were to, I used to not do it so visually. I used to just write out my plan every year. And then I noticed I'd put it away and I'd never, and then I wasn't executing because frankly, I'd forget. So this way I was like, okay, it's in front of me all day long. I have to stare at it and I have to know if we're moving the needle or not.
I love it. I love it. All right. So we're going to backtrack for a second, and I'm going
Gotcha.
to think very long and hard about these really important questions that I'm going to ask. I
Okay.
created some special ones for you, and
Ooh,
then we're
love
gonna
it.
circle back to how you landed on this strategy of using all these boards, because I love it. All right.
Love it.
So here we go.
Okay.
Big B or Starbucks?
Oh my God, BIGGBY Coffee. Come on. Jeez, I hate Starbucks.
La Rosa's or Mia's?
The roses are what?
Mia's Pizza.
Oh, low roses or Mios. Oh, Dewey's. Sorry.
Oh, all right. Well, you are an entrepreneur, so you're allowed to take the third path. Would you rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
100 horse-sized ducks. Wait, what was this? What was the latter?
That's also the third option. And that sounds terrifying, but that's your choice, so you're in it. All right. Favorite software you use in your business?
Oh, um, probably I guess HubSpot.
All right. iPhone or Android?
iPhone.
Love to win or hate to lose?
Oh, both.
Ooh, all
I
right.
don't. Yeah, yeah. I both. 100%.
If you could have a conversation with your past self, what's one piece of advice you'd give?
Definitely to not sweat the small stuff, and I would tell myself it will be okay.
Hmm. It will be okay. That's it's such an easy thing to say and such a hard thing to live, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it is. But everything always works out.
I love it. Well, thank you, Shanna. What inspired you to start your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh goodness. Okay, so my journey started. Well, first, I have been like a little bit of a closet entrepreneur my entire life. I
Ooh,
started my first business the day I graduated college. Um, Long story short, once I graduated college, I bought the day I graduated. That was a Saturday. That Monday, I closed on my first home.
wow.
I bought a house, small little house in Lansing, Michigan, where I lived at the time, and I mean it was a fixer upper, right? And I once I got it fixed up, I we had 3 bedrooms, so I invited 2 of my girlfriends to rent, to live with me and rent from me. And that kind of once I realized I was tired of roommates, I was like, well, why don't I just buy another house and you guys live here and I'm just gonna. So anyway, long story short, when I was in college,
Why don't you guys leave? And
yeah,
I'm
you guys stay. I am gonna get my own place. They were cramping my style, so
yeah.
long story short, I bought another house, moved into that. And then I realized when I moved out, like all my friends, like work friends, were like, dude, can I move in? Do you have a place I could rent? And that's when I kind of realized in Lansing there was a little bit of a housing shortage for basically young entrepreneurs that were still paying down the college debt, needed roommates to make it work. So I bought a conglomerate of homes, small, like single family units. I fixed them up and I rented them to my friends.
Hmm.
Um, so I did that, and well, I worked a professional job. I was in politics actually in my previous life.
Hmm.
So long story short, I was doing that, and then after about 5 years of doing that, I was asked to move down to Cincinnati, from Lansing to Cincinnati to be a lobbyist for a private financial company. And I did. I was like, sure, let's go to this new adventure. Let's move to the city where I know nobody, and let's travel the country trying to pass financial legislation. So I did that, and I sold all the homes that I bought in Lansing because I just couldn't manage them, obviously, from down here. So moved down here. Was in politics. Was in politics for about 8 7 8 years, I think, lobbying, and I got burnt out really quick.
That's all
I've
you can think of when you said that was this is every young girl's dream is to move to Ohio and travel the country lobbying
for
financial policy.
financial issues. I learned a lot about how the world works, and I learned a lot about the financial industry.
I imagine.
And I did kind of realize when I was in the financial industry, I realized I was like, I am working my ass off to make people really rich. And that one, I was like, I was like, God, I was like, that's why kind of like that entrepreneurial vision came back again. And, um, but I really loved Cincinnati. I love the city, made some great friends, was dating a guy, my now husband. And, it's kind of like, what do I want to do with my life? And, in politics, you're kind of, there's not much in Cincinnati for people, for lobbyists, right? You have to kind of move to Indianapolis, Columbus, Frankfurt, or DC, if you want to be around here. And I didn't want to really move to, I did my graduate work in DC, so I didn't want to be in DC. Columbus, Indianapolis didn't really interest me. Definitely not Frankfurt. So, I was like, I went out to dinner one night with my girlfriend and we were just shooting the shit. And I was like, Mandy, I was like, I got to get out of politics. I was like, I hate it. It's just killing me. And she's like, okay. She's like, well, if money didn't matter and you could do anything in the world, what would it be? And I was like, well, that's easy. She's like, what? I was like, I'd be a barista at BIGGBY Coffee, which I fell in love with when growing up in Lansing, Michigan, where we were founded. And we both kind of laughed. And she's like, "You'd make a great barista." It's like, "Yeah, I'd have so much fun." It's like, well, that doesn't pay the mortgage. And at that time, I was single. I had a mortgage, car payment, all the things, right? And I was like, oh, and I was like, geez, I was like, I think they're franchising. Um, so she's like, you should do that. So anyway, long story short, I went up to what was then at the time Discovery Day up in Lansing, Michigan, went through the process of becoming a franchisee. And this is funny, Jay, now that you asked me what I hate more, being told like winning or losing. So I
Yeah.
went up for Discovery Day and I applied to be a franchisee and the home office denied me. They said no.
Hmm. What was
They're
their
like,
reason for denial?
basically, I was too far from they were only as far south as Lima, Ohio at that time.
Hmm.
They really didn't have the infrastructure to support me down in Kentucky, Cincinnati areas, and there are a couple other reasons. I was young, I didn't really have the financial portfolio at the time that they were looking for, all the things. Well, I don't like to lose or be told no, so I was like, oh fuck this, excuse my language. I was like, I am going to make this happen. So put a plan together, went back to Mike McFall, who's the one of the owners. I was like, this is my plan. I want to do it. Read the plan, so it was pretty good. So he let me do it. So I opened my first store. Geez, thir 12 years ago. Wow. Oh my gosh. 12 years ago, almost in May, will be 12 years for my first store. Opened my first store and then got married, had a baby, and opened my second store a couple years after that. And then I think it was like 4 or 6 months after I opened my second location, the home office asked me to basically take over a territory. They're doing this new program called Area Representatives, where basically it's kind of like a master franchisor model where you have a territory. So mine is like Lima, Ohio, down to Grant County, Kentucky. And you basically build and grow the territory, open stores. And so I, find franchisees, help the franchisees find locations, get their stores open, help them to profitability.
Hmm.
That's
That's
what I do.
that's fascinating. I always there's times in my own entrepreneurial journey that I feel envious of people that work in the franchise world. And this is perception because I don't really know anything about it, and I want to dive into some of that today. And I'm like, man, they have like a roadmap, right? They have like systems that they don't have to create all their own systems. Um, and one of the first times I met you, I don't even remember what the event or occasion was, but I remember you saying franchising is not for all entrepreneurs.
It is not. There's constraints and restrictions, and there's
Mm.
systems that you have to. I mean, there is definitely some systems that are made already that that help you, but you also have to make your own systems too, right? So, but there's definitely I'm learning through because now that I have 30 some odd franchisees that are under me, that are all entrepreneurs in their own right. It's, it's a lot of people don't like the restrictions,
Hmm.
if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
it absolutely makes sense, and I feel like I would I would definitely struggle with that. It sounds like it aligns fairly well with you. I mean, you've been successful with this for over a decade now. Um, how Talk to me a little bit about that experience coming from politics and then moving into the world of franchised coffee. Like, were there things you drew on from your experience in politics that you draw on as a franchisor?
Well, I'm not being hit on by legislators anymore, so that is a win. So, no, it's definitely a yes and no. I came from a professional world, right? Where, everybody is educated and everybody is, for the most part, executing. We're trying in the for most people in politics are, they have a vision, they have morals to some extent. And no, they have like things that they want to accomplish, things they're passionate about. Um,
Hmm.
so I would say the
Hmm.
biggest surprise for me was when I opened my first store, and everybody said, like, employees are going to be the hardest thing that you're ever going to have to deal with, right? And I was like, there's no way. I was like, I work with all these fabulous people, and they show up to work and they do their job, and they're executing, and they mean well, and they, all the things. And then I think like the first week of my first store opening, I had people who ghosted me and people didn't show up and people were late and because they're 18 to 22-year-old, young adults. And I
Mhm.
wasn't prepared. That was the hardest transition for me was I just thought if you had a shift, you showed up for that shift.
Right.
And that's not how that works.
Hmm.
Um, I also made the huge mistake of treating them. I didn't think I had to monitor and coach my staff. Big mistake. I thought because when I was in college and worked as like, those kind of transitional jobs, I
Right.
thought that they knew that you gave 2 weeks notice and you worked your 2 weeks notice and that when there was downtime, you, executed the system or the cleaning. And that's not how it works.
Hmm.
And I didn't realize, and I'm not, we all have gifts and talents. Coaching is not one of mine.
Hmm.
Um, so it was there's definitely some big struggles at the beginning.
Hmm. What do you think has allowed you to move beyond buying one franchise, running that successfully, to owning multiple franchises and being the area representative? I feel like specifically in the paint some broad strokes, would say restaurant world, franchised or not, it seems like there are those that scale and those that get that one going and find it, whether it's because that's what they want and they just want that one and they want to have their hands on it, or because they just can't seem to find the path to let go and move on and grow it in a bigger way. Like, what do you think it was that allowed you to execute on that bigger vision of owning multiple franchises?
The biggest thing is executing the systems, like
Mm.
executing the systems that are in place and kind of tweaking the systems that work for you. And I'm a big believer, especially with like any kind of retail model, even any business that you want to expand and grow. When you start it, do everything you can to make it the most well-oiled machine before you start to grow. Because if you don't have that foundation, that solid foundation, when you start to grow, everything will crumble.
Mm.
So like just get the first store has to be, if that's, if you're in the retail sphere, make sure all the systems are in place, make sure staff is all, well trained, make sure they are all executing, get that, even if you're not making the money that you want, get that store to be the most optimal machine it can be. And that will help you to help you grow. Because if you just kind of have one store it's operating well, but not great, and then you
Mm.
go to open your second store, well, you're going to take your eye. There's only so many hours you have and energy, right? That first store, it's not going to be your baby anymore. The second store is going to be your baby. And if the first one isn't running to perfection and is, doing the volume that it should be and executing like it should be, it's going to start to slip. And then you're stuck in this conundrum of I'm growing store B, but store A's sales are now declining. Well, if you would have had it, as solid as a well-oiled machine as it could be, well, you wouldn't have to be, back and you wouldn't have to be babysitting that again. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. Um, and I think you may have answered my next question, but it was if the advice is make sure you have these systems set up and it's a well-oiled machine before you move on, you got into, and I think this is probably a common story in the franchise world, a business that you didn't necessarily know anything about, right? You out
I
of
was a
it.
coffee lover, but that was all I knew. Still
Uh,
am, still drink lots of it.
So did you put a lot of thought and work into those systems ahead of starting that first store, or was that really sort of the test, the guinea pig, and figured that one out and then moved on?
No, I did. What I did for the first store is I took all of the home office's systems and processes, and
Mm.
I pretty much did that. I executed all of those for about a year because after a year, you're like, okay, I have my sea legs. I got this. And after a year, I started to tweak them to fit, either my personality, my store's personality, or just kind of my staff's personality. So, and grow and expand on them. But I definitely followed the system. I executed the system 100% for at least a year. Yeah. And that's a big piece of advice I give to not only my franchisees, but also anybody else who's going into the franchise world. It's like that system worked for a reason. So execute their system fully for at least a year before you tweak anything.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's would be there's a reason they have those systems. And if I would have gone in and just like guns ablaze and be like, I don't know, that system doesn't work, or I don't like that system and changed it, that doesn't necessarily mean it would have been the best path for me or my store, and who knows where I would be. I could have spent years digging out the hole I created rather than
Hmm.
growing.
That's sounds like sound advice. When Shannon, when I'm with you, you just like you exude such a positive energy. It's like
Thank
yeah, that's truth. I mean, when you're around Shanna, you know it. You're just like you're moving forward, you're chatting people up, you're very present. Um, you know, what what is it? What's the question I'm trying to ask? Coming from the world of politics and finance, and then moving into the world of entrepreneurship, like how did that affect you as a person? Like beyond like, hey, yeah, I was dealing with different things and there were these business struggles. I mean, was there a transition there where you had to sort of, reimagine or reinvent who you are and how you show up?
Oh, 100%. I mean, when I was a lobbyist, I was expected to always be on my A game, in a business suit, of working, on call for, the owners of the company from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., dinners every night, the whining and the dining and um, the networking and just the events. And also playing the game of politics, right? I mean,
Mm.
I could tell you a million stories, but um, we won't go down that road. Um, and then, all of a sudden I'm a coffee shop owner, which is so much different where I felt I didn't have to put on a front anymore. Like I could be myself, right? Everybody who walked into that store was a customer and was part of
Mhm.
like my bigger family, and my staff was now part of my, family versus being to dinner with a legislator whose politics I don't agree with and pretending like I do. I felt
Mhm.
fake. Politics, I always felt fake. I always said when I'm out to dinner with a legislator, they're a Democrat, I'm a Democrat. If they're Republican, I'm a Republican. Like you just have to. I mean, I always felt in politics, I always had a mask on. I always had to be perfect. I always had to BS my way through through it all. Had to pretend like I thought that legislator's idea was the most brilliant idea in the world in order to get their vote. And
Mhm.
I hated it. It was horrible. It's a mean, ugly profession.
Mm.
So I don't have to do that with coffee. I, you know, I get to make, and like that was the one thing I was like in politics, I never felt I could make anybody happy. I was you're always it's always compromising, which is great. I'm a middle child, so compromise is really important in my world. So I was always like, but I was always compromising. I was always trying to please somebody. Whereas with coffee shops or even selling franchises, all I have to do is like I literally make people happy every single day, by selling them a legally addictive substance.
It fuels our economy.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. So it's definitely, but I learned lots of lessons. I wouldn't take my experience in politics back for anything. I grew, I saw a lot. It's definitely, I don't know if I'd advise young women to get into politics.
Mm.
Um, but there are some good things in politics if you really want to make it. And that was my objective of going into politics is I wanted to make a difference in the world. Like I never thought I'd be a lobbyist. I always actually thought I'd work for legislators, which I did for a while. Those were my first jobs. I worked for, I selected legislators I wanted to work for. I helped get them elected. And then once they were elected, I tried to help them push their agenda. So that's where I felt those were solid jobs. I really enjoyed them. I felt I was making a difference. I did state politics then for Michigan. I felt I was making a difference in the state of Michigan. In lobbying, I kind of felt it's just a different ballgame.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
But this isn't about politics.
Well,
So
what do you think is the biggest lesson you learned that you've taken into your entrepreneurial journey from that time in politics?
the, how do I phrase this? Um, it is the easiest thing to do in our world is to just show up and execute.
Hmm.
Very few people are willing or able to do that. And if you can just do those two things, you will be far ahead of most people.
Hmm.
And also
Show
just yeah, show up and execute.
and
Those are
also,
big, you'd be shocked. Those are big asks.
yeah, they absolutely. You know, I've had this in my consciousness recently. It was like, you know, I'm at a point with our business where for years, I was, in the grind, we had sort of a private practice model. So I was doing sort of all the things. Like I kind of imagined you when you said you opened the BIGGBY Coffee, and it was like people came in and they were happy. I imagine that if I go into one of your stores now, you're not at the counter. You're doing other things.
Yeah, no, I'm not behind the counter anymore, which some days I wish I was. I miss those
Mhm.
days.
Yeah, different kinds of problems
Yes. I
and
miss
opportunities.
walking, yeah, seeing my customers walk in or bringing their kids in and sharing that was always the best part. That is the best part about owning coffee shops is, your customers become family
Mm,
and, you get to share in their wins. You cry with them in their losses. I mean, and there's, those customers that all of a sudden stop coming in and you find out, or, another customer tells you that they passed or, like there's heartache too. There's and you also become your staff. You get to know, I mean, especially most of my staff are young women.
yeah.
I try to guide them with financial decisions, which because I think financial literacy is extremely important to me, and I think it's a huge miss in our society. So when I was in the stores more, I try to teach them financial literacy and explain to them the decisions they're making now with credit cards and student loans and auto loans, how that will impact them in the future.
Mm,
And there was a couple times, one of my employees, I'll never forget her. She's actually a lawyer now, so I'm very proud of her. But she came into my store, she came in for a shift with a black eye. I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And she had some ridiculous excuse. I was like, I know that's not true. I was like, are you safe where you're at?
mm.
And she's like, she just broke down. She's like, I'm not. We were able to get her help and get her out of that situation. And now she's thriving.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm hearing this passion come through about it's interesting you said that coaching is not something that you I don't know if you said well or that you like or something like hearing a lot
I suck at it. We all have strengths, I'm like I'm a quick learner and I think everybody else is, so everybody's like, slow down. I'm a fast thinker. I'm a fast doer. I'm a fast talker. I'm a fast, and so I'm like, how do you not follow me? So no, I suck at coaching, but I am the one thing I'm a people person. I love people. What's that question, which I'd love, I mean, I think I know the answer for you, but one of the first questions I always ask, random people I meet, if you had to choose to always be with somebody every minute of the day for the rest of your life, or to never be with anybody else the rest of your life, what would you choose? And for
yeah,
me, this is the
yeah,
easiest thing in the world. I would have somebody by my side all the time,
yeah.
and definitely. But there are like, there's a lot of people. I'm assuming you would too.
100%.
Yeah. Even if I couldn't choose that person, even if it was some random person, I would still I just want to be with people. I'm a true lover of people.
Mm, hmm. Well, as our social chair, former social chair, you
I
you
know.
crushed that role for years, and I imagine that was good alignment.
It was. I kind of miss those days. I met with Lisa yesterday to go over our new calendar. And it was like, oh, of course I took over the meeting like I always do. Like, okay, we're gonna do this.
What, when I don't want to make this too much about franchises, but I'm feeling like that's what needs to happen.
Yeah, that's right.
Because when I look at our chapter, and I would say the broader EO community, it's not common that you find franchise owners. Um,
That's right.
I mean, what's your take on that? What's the why behind why there's not more in EO, or like why?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, I think the easy answer and probably the truth behind it is because our a lot of franchises is franchisees especially, like they have their own community, right? They have forums, or they have franchisees that they're BFFs with, that they, when they're having issues or struggles or victories, they have their own little community. I mean, they have their own community, right? So I feel that it's probably like they don't see, they're like, well, why would I do join EO, because I already have somebody who is fighting those fights with me, and if I have that struggle, I just call up Joe, who's a franchisee in a neighboring state, and they give me guidance, help, and support. It's kind of my guess. The reason, it's interesting you say that, because when I joined EO, I was the only franchisee, the only BIGGBY coffees here in the city. So for me, when I was introduced to EO, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, people who understand my problems, people who can help me, people, all, that's why I joined EO. But now that I have 38 odd, 39 stores and 30 some franchisees, I guess in the 20s, they have their own communities, like, in terms of, like, there's like, I hate to say for lack of a better term, but cliques, right? I mean, they have friends, they have, there's one franchisee who I know they talk to the other franchisees every single day. So I don't think that they need quite I don't think, if I were to, my guess is that's why the franchisees already assume they have those communities.
They have community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people who understand their struggles and their victories and can help them when something's going awry. Whereas when I joined EO, I did not have that. The next closest store to me was Lima, Ohio, which is, 2.5 hours, or about 2 hours, away. So
Hmm.
I really needed this community at the time, and I still do.
Hmm. How have you benefited as an entrepreneur from being a part of the EO community?
Oh my gosh, how have I not? I mean, it's first and foremost, it definitely gave me confidence and vision and understanding, kind of like, I'm not most business owners don't know everything there is everything there is about business, right? I mean, my undergrad and graduate were both in political science. I don't have an MBA. So, first I think, kind of close the gap to understanding like my P&Ls more, or,
Hmm.
just kind of, giving me some basic business accoutrement that I probably didn't have or received from either my own education or from politics. From there, I feel like they really gave me the confidence to scale. Um, when I had these two stores and I had this opportunity to then become an area representative and take on this huge territory and franchise myself, it was scary. So I took that opportunity back to my forum and just kind of said, "Hey guys, what do you guys think?" And we went through one of the drills, all the talked about the bonuses, and I presented on it, and they really gave me the confidence to say, "Yep, I can do this. Let's move forward."
Mhm.
Um, and from there, they've helped me, being master franchisor like I am now. I have different problems than when I was just not just, but when I was just had my two stores. And my
Right.
problems are, they're not necessarily bigger, they're just different. And they're things I've never experienced before. So my forum, and obviously my fellow members and board members, help me kind of work through those issues that I haven't faced yet.
Hmm. Yeah, that resonates a lot with what I experienced in the insurance world, which is my business. There's a very tight and dynamic community in the insurance space. Lots of independent agencies across the country and the state of Ohio. There's very active state associations, even sort of forum type experiences that they set up so that agency owners can learn from each other and have a confidential place to share and grow. And I did all of those things for years. And at some point, a client of mine recommended EO, and they kind of saw that we were breaking out of the mold of what a lot of the competition was doing, and was like, I think you can benefit from this kind of experience. And I just signed up and did it without really knowing what to
Oh,
expect.
wow.
But one of my yeah, before I was even placed in a forum, I met with Larry Kavanaugh.
Yeah, fabulous man.
Yeah, amazing human being. And I, I was just sharing with him my experience as an entrepreneur and, how our business was doing. And I was very proud that we had grown by 20+% for X number of years, which in the insurance space, that's like you're crushing it.
Yeah.
And, in his very humble, gentle, and amazing way, he was like, wow, that's amazing, but also shared their growth as a software company. And I was like, wait a second, like maybe I'm shooting way too low. And I knew that Entrepreneurs Organization was for me. But my takeaway there was there's so much value in these industry organizations and communities. When I stepped outside of what the industry could offer me, all of a sudden things clicked and took off.
100%. Like you're exposed to a whole new world that I just didn't even know existed. And people like, franchising, you're kind of, even if your community is your other franchisees or, master franchisors, however it is, yes, they're all in the same battle, but that doesn't necessarily, and they're all helping each other, but that doesn't mean they're going to help you grow either.
Mm.
Whereas EO, I feel, meeting all the different entrepreneurs with all of their different businesses and their business models and their ambitions and their goals. I mean, I grow every time. I mean, that's why I love being part of this community. Is every time I'm with someone, even if it's just a one-on-one lunch or a huge event, I learn something that
Mm.
I can take and implement into my business that I probably wouldn't have been exposed to if I had just stayed within my franchise, only use my franchisees as my peers to help me grow.
Sure. Well said. Shanna, what would you say is the toughest challenge you faced as an entrepreneur?
The economy. I mean, coffee to some extent is recession proof.
Hmm.
So, we do pretty much remain relatively steady. But the hardest part for me has literally been in the past 18 months with labor increases and COGS just going, inflation has killed us. Um, and this is definitely the past 18 months has been the hardest 18 months of my journey.
Hmm.
COVID, we had some challenges, mostly staffing challenges, but this has been inflation is hard. Inflation's real. It really is. So I would say in labor, I mean, we are, paying labor is, I mean, it used to be most of my employees were, like I said, high school, college kids at, 20 hours a week. And, but now, we're paying them real wages, which is great. I think everybody should earn, have a good
Yeah.
life and be able to earn money. But it's, when you can only sell a cup of coffee for so much, right? People are only willing to pay so much for that cup of Joe. But when you're paying your baristas 12, 13, $14 an hour, those are real challenges.
Hmm. So those shifting market forces that are just changing
Yeah.
the pieces of the puzzle for you.
Well, right. And, inflation with people, when they go to the grocery store and for a family of four is spending $200 a week on just basic necessities, that doesn't give them a lot of financial freedom and flexibility to, go and get that cup of Joe or go out to breakfast anymore. People are really changing their spending habits. I mean, I understand it's a pendulum. It will swing again. I understand that. But right now it's real and it's affecting us.
Hmm. So how are you overcoming or working through that challenge?
We're trying a couple things. I'm a big believer in mining your diamonds. So that means, every customer that comes in that door, give them the best customer service, expose them to new products and new food in hopes that you can increase their ticket every time they come in. Another way is to discount heavily, do what you can to get in market, right? And advertise, get new people in that door, get people to try you because they have a free drink coupon or a 50% off a sandwich coupon, however it may be. And then, also, I would say, well, I mean, definitely the hardest part or the easiest part for us is doing discounting bundles, having packages for your for the customers that come in and saying, okay, you used to be able to get a cup of coffee and a bagel. Let's say that was $5. Well, now let's package it together for $4.50. Just
Mhm.
kind of giving in-store discounts in order to kind of make the price point a little bit lower in hopes that instead of them coming to you twice a week, they now come 3 times a week.
Hmm. So this next question is something I imagine you do a fair amount of, considering you have or are starting a consulting company, and also work with all kinds of new franchisees.
Sure do.
Um,
Yeah.
what piece of advice would you give someone who is considering opening up a franchise for the first time?
Absolutely. Easiest thing, do your due diligence. It is, I do not get, I think there are, what I do love, there are lots of laws, right? If you were to walk through my door right now and say, I want to own a Big B Coffee, the great thing is I legally cannot make you a franchisee for at least 2 weeks. And I
Hmm.
think that is great.
Hmm.
I honestly think it probably should be a little bit longer, but that's what the federal government requires us to do. And honestly, I have a very slow onboarding process. I do not allow anybody to become a franchisee within 2 weeks.
Is that
It
like a
is,
consumer protection thing? You said that's a federal
yep,
law?
yep, absolutely. It's basically so you don't like go to a convention, meet,
Right.
see a new franchise and be like, oh my gosh, I have to do this because it's a huge investment. I mean, only opening one coffee shop is a $500,000 investment. And
Hmm.
some franchises are much more expensive.
Hmm.
Um, so I really like how there's kind of like a waiting period where you can be introduced to the franchise, read their franchise disclosure document, which is, I mean, it's a pretty hefty document. It's anywhere from, I've seen them as minimal as 100 pages to 1,000. Ours is about 350.
Hmm.
Most of them are written in layman's terms. I highly recommend, which I did, read, and I tell all my potential franchisees, read every single sentence because it's a legally binding contractual document. Um, and talk to other franchisees. Like meet people, not only go to the stores, meet the owners, hear about their experience, talk to them, do what you can to know more as much as you can about the franchise. Because there are some franchises out there that are not good players,
Hmm.
unfortunately. So, and we've seen it. There's been one franchise here in Cincinnati, not in the coffee world, but in the restaurant space that kind of imploded. And a lot of people lost a lot of money.
Hmm.
Um, and that's scary. So I always tell anybody, I like, and I'll talk to, a million people who are looking to get into the franchising world, Big B or not. And my first advice is always to take your time and do your due diligence because
Hmm.
it's not the right path. And I'm a big believer. I tell everybody who I talk to, I'm like, that's interested in Big B. I'm like, here's the thing. This is not a quick path. I was like, we are going to take this path together. I was like, that is a huge life change. And it's okay if you don't move forward. We do no high pressure sales. Very much this is a choice they have to and want to make. And I always say, I will provide you with the next steps on how to move forward in the process. But if you choose to not make that step, that's okay. And we'll still be friends and we'll still have coffee.
Hmm. Wonderful. What do you think makes a good franchise? If somebody's looking at a good franchise opportunity, I should say, for some.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think I mean, it kind of depends. I would say definitely one that has a presence in where you're hoping to open up that franchise. I mean, for someone who has opened a store with no market presence, it was very hard. And I don't think that's for everybody. So I'm not saying like, you have to open up, something that is all over a city, but like if hypothetically, if there was no stores in, Lexington, Kentucky, it'd be a safe bet to open a Big B Coffee there because we have some market presence, right? So, but I would say market presence is definitely a huge plus, even if it's not directly in your vicinity, at least close by. The second one would be to make sure that your franchise has its process and procedures locked down. Can't tell you how many times people have said, I'm interested in this franchise. And then when I start asking basic questions, they're like, oh, they don't do that. They don't have that. I was like, okay, then run. Because when you're buying a franchise, you're really buying the name of that franchise, you're buying the advertising that franchise does, and you're buying the systems. So if there's no systems in place, there's no advertising, and there's no name brand, so open your own, whatever, open your
Whatever.
own shop. Yeah. Um, Not to say you can't get on the, cutting edge of a franchise, but I would proceed with caution.
Hmm.
Um, but process procedures and awareness in the market, I think are the two most important things.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Shanna. That was some enjoyed our time together.
Me
Some
too, my
great
friend.
for anybody looking to get into the franchise business or scale what they've got. Shanna, if people wanted to reach out to you, how could they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Tell them to send me a text. That's the easiest way. Because my name, Shanna Novosel, is very hard, and nobody will ever email me because they won't spell it right, which is totally fair. So send me a text. I'd love to hear from people. 513-317-1730. It is my cell phone. I will answer it. I don't screen my calls most
You
of the
heard
time.
it. She loves people, so she's waiting to hear from you. Well, thank you, Shanna. We
Thanks,
appreciate
Jay.
it and look forward to seeing you soon.
Bye, my friend.